We now would like to begin the press conference by Prime Minister Ishiba. First of all, we'd like to hear what the Prime Minister has to say. Please. Well, good afternoon. It's very late. Thank you for your time. In this Diet session, I made a general policy speech and I quoted of the former Prime Minister, Tanzania Shibashi, by saying that we should reflect on what we should have reflected, but at the same time we would like to ask for the other opposition parties or camps so that we can put the Diet matters or operations right. Embracing that words, we try to forge consensus beyond the parties and we try to make an effort to have the deliberation throughout the Diet session. As a result of that, looking back at the budget for FY 2025, actually this is the first time for 29 years in the upper house, and the first time actually in the lower house. In the upper house, 29 years in the lower house, and the first in the upper house, we are able to revise that budget in Diet session, and we are able to enact it. And actually, government submitted 59 bills, and we are able to succeed to make a reality of the 58, and 13 treaties were all enacted. As far as the diplomacy is concerned, we are able to take advantage of Expo 2025 Osaka Kansai, and we are able to see the leaders of around 40 countries this year, and we are able to visit the United States and ASEAN 4 countries. In Canada, UNASCIS and G7 summit was held. I said that Ukraine, Middle East, and Eastern Asian affairs were closely linked. So G7 needs to continue to unite so that we can lead the responses of the international community. That's the message I highlighted, and for which each country agree. That's how I see that. The President of the United States, President Trump, and the President Lee Jae-myung of the South Korea, who just took office, and other leaders and myself were able to have a summit. As a ruling party that takes accountability for national affairs, we are able to gain so many cooperation from many, and we are able to deliver certain results. Once again, I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate all the parties concerned to make an effort. Thank you so much. Based on discussions we had in this Diet session, we wanted to realize in Japan that you can feel that tomorrow is better than today. So current nominal GDP is around 600 trillion yen today, but we would like to raise it to 1,000 trillion yen in 2040. Currently, average income of around 4 million Japanese yen, we would like to increase more than 50%. It takes 3 approaches. Number 1, wage hike and inflation measures, and those are the responses we have to make against the recent issues, so that we are able to remove all the bugbear of the issues of the people in Japan. Number 2, that we have to take responses against tariff policies by the United States. We have to secure safety, security. We will go about the reform of Social Security so that we are able to dispel the concerns for tomorrow. We will revitalize region, promote investment, so that we can create the future you can have hope. Anyone who hopes to do so can be pregnant and have babies with no concerns. That's a society we would like to create. We call it as a silent crisis, where we see that the under 700,000 of babies born in Japan. We need to reverse that trend as we go forward. First of all, go back to the first one, the removing the bugbear of today. The wage hike this year, we are able to increase more than 5% for 2 years in succession, for the first time the highest in 33 years, exceeding the data of last year. And because of the revision of the law, the teaching adjustment allowance was able to raise for the first time approximately 50 years. The effective wage will continue to go up approximately 1%. This shouldn't be no surprise. That's the kind of society we would like to realize. To do that, over the next 5 years, we would like to execute the policy package to promote the better productivity investment for SMEs and micro companies with a 60 trillion yen. There are labor shortages and inflation, and those are issues that the medical service, nursery, and welfare, and those are the services official prices will be going up. As far as the minimum wage is concerned, national average of the 1,500 yen in 2020, that's an aspirational target. But to do that, to hit the target, we continuously make incessant effort. And then 5 years, we would like to have a collective initiative at the maximum. The budget and tax system, the standard level shouldn't be left unattended at the low level that we saw in deflationary period. We should go overhaul and review those. Until that we're able to realize that wage rise, that going over the inflation, we are going to do several things. Number one, that 20,000 yen of the benefits will be offered for the one kid on top of the 30,000 yen for low-income families, and also the 100% of the enrichment of the child rearing leave for child rearing families, and also income tax cuts of the 20 or 40,000 yen by raising 1.03 million yen. However, we are not able to realize wage rise that staying over inflation yet. Against those responses, we shouldn't resort to the deficit financing bond and not resulting to the helicopter money. We need to really focus on the people who are really in need, and that benefits have been stipulated in a platform, and that's the one thing we would like to realize. Especially inflation feels so enormous for food expenses. Looking at the inflation impact need to be considered well. With that, the 40,000 yen per kid and 40,000 yen per one adult for low-income earners, and other people will give out 20,000 yen benefits. In other words, wage rise hasn't stayed over inflation. We need to take it seriously. We should really think about it head on. That's what it is. Consumption tax. I'll repeat this many times, but medical service, pension, and nursery services, those are the social security that's been undergirded by this income tax, which is a very important financial source. We need stable financial source. Without the stable financial sourcing, we can't cut that consumption tax, which is irresponsible. Much and many were consumed by high income earners, and they were able to enjoy the tax cuts, which is higher, and which means that they are able to enjoy the privilege. Is it really okay? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And looking at the past experiences, in order to go over the system revision, it took 1 year or so after we revised the law up until execution. It's time consuming, and we have to give a privilege for high income earners, and above anything else, the consumption tax cut, which put the social security financing at stake, which is not appropriate option. The further support should be given to the child rearing families. So Komi Party and Japan Innovation Party and ourselves agreed on the free tuition for high schools and school meals for free for all the elementary schools. It shouldn't be any unfairness because of you were born in a certain period of time, and reskilling in a later life, and towards which the formation of assets need to be supported. Now moving on to the price of the rice, 500,000 tons of the stock rice will be transferred and sold over depending upon the negotiated contract. But actually, average price started to go dwindling. The 3,920 yen per 5 kilo, we are able to see the great progress. the rice price surge causes need to be looked into, and we need to vet the responses. And from the perspective of food security, we need to have a better productivity, and the added value need to be amplified. We need to expand export, and which requires a policy change, so that consumers all feel no worries to purchase the rice on stable manner, and the farmers, passionate farmers, shouldn't have any worries and anxieties to increase that production yield.
Response to rising energy prices is of course important, and we are trying to cap the gasoline price by 10 yen per liter at a fixed basis. And then we have a escalation happening in the Middle East, and for sharp oil price hikes. And between July and August, using surplus funds, a preventive alleviation measure will kick off starting on Thursday or 26th of June. And for gasoline, local regions have less public transformation means or transportation means, so therefore, on top of the current fixed amount reduction, we will try to also cap the current retail price at the current level, nearing the Ukraine crisis. And for termination of the provisional tax rate, and based on the agreement with the Komeito Party and the DPFP, on top of the securing the fundings for restoring and establishing the social infrastructure, we will try to make a conclusion. And for power and gasoline, costs are between July and September in the hot summer for standard households, around the 3,000 yen burden will be alleviated by our support. Next, how to dispel the future concerns regarding the additional tariff measures by the United States. Investments should come first before the tariffs, and we will try to protect our national interest, and then in the manner that is conducive to both our nations' interests, we'd like to exert all possible means. And at 1,000 nationwide consultation windows, we'd like to provide detail-oriented support for providing a cash flow support for SMEs, and we'd like to exhaust all available means for the domestic area, and wherever necessary, we'd like to take additional measures. And Japan is a disaster-prone nation, so therefore we have to be number one in terms of prevention of the disasters. We need to continuously recover and rehabilitate ourselves from March 11 and Noto earthquake. On top of that, through legislative measures and legislations, we will try to collaborate with volunteers and provide welfare services to victims, and accelerate the recovery for our water infrastructure. And as for the betterment of the living environment for evacuation shelters, the number of toilet cars is going to be around 4 times as much. And on top of that, including carton box beds and kitchens, we'd like to also ramp up our reserves. The people in evacuation shelters are suffering a lot, the most. So therefore, we have to pursue the betterment of the living environment for those people. This year, we doubled the number of the Cabinet Office disaster prevention officials, and under the special designated minister, with experts and the budget disaster prevention agency will be established. And we are now amid the most complicated security environment after World War II, and in order to fundamentally reinforce our defense capabilities, we try to invalidate the servers attacking us by cyber means. And the betterment of the officials for SDS officials' treatments is, of course, imminent issue for reinforcement of defense capabilities. So therefore, we had a compilation of the basic policies at the relevant ministers' meeting, and based on that, 50% of SDF officials said in a questionnaire that they are fully motivated to work. Even more, and the number of the people who are quitting halfway through is now dwindling. So we have more effects coming up, and then we'd like to further improve their treatment, and including how to respond to the current Middle East situation. We'd like to have all available means for the protection of Japanese people living overseas and for pension system, we will try to eliminate 1.06 million war. And so we were able to realize the transformation for better pension, and together with the CDP, the basic pension level decline will be prevented if we have no betterment of the economic situation. And for the first time in 5 years, we are having the institutional reformation, and we were able to secure the benefits for pension receivers. And for high-cost medical expense benefit system, reflection will be reflected onto the further response. And then, based on the agreement with the JIP and the Communist Party, we will try to rationalize the number of beds, and then we will try to alleviate the people's burden, including the premium for the incumbent and painless delivery, and the cancer-related measures for breast cancer and the toilets for female women. So we will pursue betterment of the response for better living environment and society for women. In order to prepare for big disasters and contingencies, we need to have fiscal margin. So therefore, fiscal consolidation needs to be addressed between 2025 and the 2026 fiscal years as soon as possible. Primary balance should be turned around, and then towards a pre-COVID level, debts to GDP ratio is going to be stably declined. And next, creating the promising future from cost-cut economy to high added value economy, different measures were exercised. As a result, the wage and the domestic investment, we are having a turnaround or turning point in order to accelerate and maintain this wage increase, and then regional revitalization 2.0, and the investment needs to be promoted. And for regional revitalization 2.0, AI, robots and drones and different technologies will be exercised. And then with the hometown resident system, a registration system, 10 million related people will be created, and will accelerate the growth of the economy for better environment for the region. And based on the basic scheme, we need to maximize the people's power. And based on the public and private collaboration, the labor transformation of the Japanese archipelago is going to be advanced. GX, DX, and the economic security and contents on top of the healthcare and the disaster prevention, etc., will be accelerated by private and public investment, and we will promote the overseas investment in Japan, and then strategic research and innovation and startup support and future-oriented innovation creation is going to be done. And based on such three approaches, the existing measures and the budget will be exercised and maximized for accurate operations of economy and fiscal operations. And the basic policy on economic and fiscal management and reform, and the new capitalism execution plan and revitalization 2.0 and a basic scheme, and based on the platform of the election, we'd like to pursue for further platform for the upper house election.
Now we would like to entertain questions from the floor. First of all, leading media outlet, go ahead. This is Ota from NHK. Thank you very much. Looking at the policy schedule, and each ruling and opposition parties value the upper house election, and as you said, that how are you going to take countermeasures on inflation and tariff by the United States? You need to have a negotiation, and you need to regain trust of the politics. You have mounting issues. And what are the focus of the issues in this upper house election? What are the policies you like to climb? And what are the targets of the winning seats? And what will be the important milestone to judge whether you win or lose? Well, there are much focus area. Rather than saying it's a contentious point, it should be focus point. How exactly can we create a strong economy or abundant economy? Those are the important pillars we should realize. That's the commitment we would like to get across. 1,000 trillion yen of GDP and more than 50% of income need to be raised. A strong economy and sustainably wage rise need to be realized as abundant life and security and disaster prevention and public security measures, and through the constitution revision, we should make Japan stronger. Those are the messages we would like to come across. But one of the most important and interest is inflation, the price of the rice. That's something I already touched, and energy prices. We would like to get this right. Inflation. That's something we need to get the job done. Plus, Japan shouldn't have any worries to live. The anxiety for yesterday, today, and the future should be removed, and tomorrow, then today, and next year, better than this year. That's something that we would like to let the general public feel. That's the message we would like to get across. Now, for the number of seats, it's not that seats that we should mention, but the majority, including the non-re-elected seats. For that, we would like to maximize our effort in this election.
Nishi Nippon newspaper, Otsuka-san, over to you. Nishi Nippon newspaper, Otsuka is my name. Thank you very much. As you mentioned before about the negotiation on the U.S. tariff measures, as for the Japanese government, different measures were packed into one package, and in the previous summit meetings there was no consensus, and are you going to pivot the traditional way of negotiating? And then also auto is hit severely, and we have severe concerns. And don't you think that we have to set a target for the consensus on 9th of July? There will be explanation of the measure to be imposed, as mentioned, and then there is also a situation in the Middle East, and how are you going to act on Mr. Trump? Okay. So the consensus or the agreement needs to be realized at an early juncture, and if we have to stick to this, then national interest may be hampered, and that should never happen. So, like I have said before, so one by one, and regarding each point, administrative level and between cabinet officials, in a very detail-oriented manner, we are having groundwork, and for auto and aluminum and auto parts and reciprocal tariffs, the additional measures were already taken for tariffs, and that will impact the Japanese industries. And we are not protracting as a negotiation for the sake of prolonging situation, however, had to be conducive to the national interest of both sides. In the Kananaskis summit previous time for 30 minutes, I had a face-to-face conversation with Mr. Trump. At the end of the day, it will be decided by the US president, but I myself bear the national interest, so therefore, with full efforts, I'd like to tackle this negotiation, and at the administrative level and at summit level and the cabinet officials level, we should never undermine the national interest of Japan. However, we have to pursue win-win situation for both countries' national interests. So we'd like to exercise our efforts with that in mind. And about the extension of the gracious period and for additional tariffs, yes, there are many ideas, I think, raised. However, for that part again, what will be the most effective and what will be the most conducive to national interests? With that in mind, we'd like to exhaust our efforts. And as for Mr. Trump and how to act on him, of course, we have to act on him. And tariff measures, of course, exist. However, the Middle East situation, security situation also exists as well. Like I said before in the press conference remarks, Ukraine, the Middle East, and Asia are linked with each other. So therefore, the U.S. President, Mr. Trump, also has a strong passion about it. The tariff measures and the security affairs, with full efforts, I'd like to address negotiations and consultations with Mr. Trump.
From here on, I would like to entertain questions from the floor, including other media outlets. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Fuji TV, Yasujima-san, go ahead. This is Jima from Fuji TV. Thank you. On Middle East affairs, let me ask you that question. In Iran, might block the Strait of Hormuz, and there are more concerns around that possibility. And full blockage of the Strait of Hormuz has never occurred, but the blockage or blocking of the navigation, how do you see that possibility once that's blocked and the world economy, Japanese economy, might be severely impacted? How do you counter this issue? And in terms of diplomacy, do you have any your unique or specific initiatives to sound out each country? Well, as far as the potential blockage of the Strait of Hormuz are concerned, I wouldn't conclusive in making any comments today. But in Middle East affairs, 80% of oil is dependent in that region, and stable energy supply for Japan in that context that could have enormous impact. So we continue to have maximized sense of urgency to work on this issue. We need to calm down the situation as soon as possible, which is the most important thing. But the path of dialogue needs to go back on track. That strongly we would like to urge. Plus, it shouldn't sound no surprise, but the Japanese national living overseas need to be secured for their safety, which is also important. Now, energy pricing and gasoline prices are the symbolic one that could be severely impacted by this incident. 175 yen before Ukraine conflict, that level need to be sustained, and for that, we'll work on the countermeasures, as I said in the speech at the very beginning. We need to presume various eventuality to take appropriate measures. So we would like to brace ourselves for that with the preparation.
Yes. Now, Yomiuri newspaper, Tajima-san. Yomiuri newspaper, my name is Tajima, thank you. So in this session, with minority government, you had to run the diet session and you had to collaborate with opposition parties in order to go ahead with your policies. There might have been some cap or some limitation, and going forward, if there is any emergence of the opposition parties who are collaborating with you in order to stabilize your running of the operation, are you going to expand the coalition government, or are you going to dissolve the diet at some point of time, and then are you going to secure some majority with the Komi Party and LDP? Regarding the dissolution of the diet and the expansion of the coalition, I will not give you any speculative comments. However, generally speaking, I would say that about the coalition government, we can never form the coalition government based on specific themes. And when I was the policy chief, at that time, Mr. Kan Naoto was there as a prime minister, and with Mr. Tanigaki, there was action taken with Mr. Tanigaki for the coalition government formation. However, it was just one specific theme. It was just, but we can never formulate the government or a coalition government based on March 11 measures. So we have to really have a consensus on different measures. So that should not happen at any juncture.
AP 通信の山口さん。
Yamaguchi-san from AP Press. This is Yamaguchi from AP. Thank you. My question is on defense budget. The Pentagon of the United States had said that Asian allies, including Japan, as NATO is discussing the 5% of the defense budget against GDP, that's the kind of the level that those countries should raise. That's the discussions going on. And for FY 2027, that you want to hit a 2% against GDP. That's a target that you might want to achieve, but because of the deepened and more complex security environment, including increasing defense budget, how would you like to improve or enhance defense capability? What's your comment? And one and after and another, there are pressing requests from the President Trump, but how would you like to address those? Thank you. Well, in this diet session, I repeated this comment a number of times. It's not that I know everything post-war period, but as far as I know, the most tough security environment we have to live in right now, and Europe, Middle East, Asia. Those are regions that are closely intertwined and linked. Now, in this environment, defense capability to be reinforced. If you do that, as an independent country, you have to do this. Land, sea, sky, or cyberspace, or space, or talent or resources, we have to add up anything that's necessary to achieve that. How much against GDP, it's not something that we should be based on, but we are going to continue to add up on that anything that we believe that is necessary. But to do that, one of the allies, the United States, Japan, continue to adjust in discussion. Because we are ally, it shouldn't be no surprise. We continue to communicate closely with the country. It shouldn't be based on the amount of money or how much first. It's very important to add up on anything that's necessary. To do that, taxpayers or general public needs to be understandable, and we need to gain understanding from them for that why that it's needed, and for that we need to make an effort.
Next, over to Nakajima-san of TBS. TBS, Nakajima, thank you. Previously, there was a mention of some Middle East affairs, and on top of that question, home straight, if there is a blockade, then collective defense, self-defense force exercise, do you think that would be the case? Regarding our government policy, at the time of peace registration, there was a discussion, so there's no change about the stance and about the collective self-defense force exercising. For us, whether or not if the attack is considered as the clear attack on the Japanese soil or Japan, that really counts. So based on such an idea, collective self-defense force exercise will follow the previous predecessors' ideas.
Any other questions? Niigata Nippon, Kaise-san. Kaise from Niigata Nippon. Thank you. My question is on the price of the rice policies. Stock rice has been sold, and you try to tame the rice surges. But in those land, it could be that declining and nosediving rice price, and that's one of the concerns that farmers have, and that's a anxiety for today and tomorrow. In this diet session, in several times you said that you're going to subsidize of the farmers of the rice. After 2027, I guess you're going to take measures in case the rice price goes down. And at this stage, how would you like to secure support for them? And FY 2025 and 6, what are the measures would you like to take? Well, going back to the statement I made, the consumers shouldn't have any worries with a stable price band for rice. That's important. 100% goes up of the price of the rice. By any measure, it's not normal. We're going to have a negotiated price with the farmers and retailers, and we need to make them understand. And 3,000 or 4,000 yen on average. But then, what about farmers? (2025, 2026), what about the rice? What does it look like for those prices? It takes time to realize those prices. I mean, in that potential future, we need to make sure that people shouldn't have any worries, and we should reward the farmers, and we are able to tame the price surge of the price. We need to take a good balance. Now, you touch a little bit about the compensation of the farmers. I mean, tax is a financial sources. Do that if we do it. So it should fit that what we have to do, meaning that we have to reduce the cost and increase as value, and we have to make an effort. We need to let them make an effort for export, so that the the compensation will be possible, which is shouldered by the taxpayers. The farmers' anxiety concerns sit there. What if the price rise goes down? Yes, we will think about the compensation for their income, but it shouldn't be as great as a burden on the general public. At the same level, we need to hear the opinions from the parties concerned, the people who need to protect, who have safeguarded and protected their lands, and for them, we need to protect them. We should reward them, and we need to stand by and run side by side with them. And at the same time, we should deliver an environment where consumers shouldn't have any worries but to purchase rice.
して
Now, 河北新報吉田さん。河北新報 My name is Yoshida, thank you. About the Disaster Prevention Agency in Sendai City and Fukushima and Iwaki across the nation, there have been calls for setting up the regional footprint, and at an early juncture, there has to be the criteria demonstrated for setting up such locations, and by when are you going to get it done, and what kind of criteria do you think will be needed? And big disaster victimized regions having such branches, how do you see this, such an idea? Well, regarding the criteria, there is no crystal clear idea. However, for that part, when the disaster happens, disaster prevention agency should never be invalidated or should not have any dysfunction. So even at the time of disasters, we have to consider the primary locations for that scenario, and there is a pool of expertise in different areas, Tohoku and the March 11. Still, the recovery is halfway through for March 11, so we have to continue on such function as well at the same time. For the next 5 years, based on the past 5 years, we have to further accelerate our efforts, like I have said before. So based on such an idea, March 11 recovery and rehabilitation, and we have to further accelerate such efforts, and with that in mind, the locations and how they should exist. So we'd like to pursue different ideas. We haven't really had a clear standards as of today. However, the functions should be conducive to the nationwide people, and we have to respond to different business operations and needs.
いかがでしょうか。
Any other questions? Mix-san from Nikkei. Miki from Nikkei newspaper, again on the Middle East affairs to follow up a little bit. Yesterday, the United States made an attack on Iran, and you were asked whether the government of Japan supports this or not, and you said that you will discuss it within the cabinet. And there is a lack of the grounds for the international acts, and there are some experts' opinions that's violating some. Now, do you think its attack is valid? How do you assess this? And Middle East affairs and other security-related discussions, how would you like to deploy the discussion? What are the messages would you like to claim in the election campaign? Well, in terms of the international law, there are various discussions going on. Yes, I'm aware of that, and myself, I look at this from different multifaceted way to think about this issue. Japan is not party directly engaged, and the detailed facts, we are not in a position to stay on top of every single piece of the fact. So conclusive grounds for that act, it will be very difficult to judge that. But on the international acts and what kind of assessment that will be possible, always we have to think about that. Now this time, the United States made a response. The situation need to be calmed down as soon as possible, whereas the deterring Iran from holding nuclear weapons, that commitment was demonstrated this time. Around Japan, those nuclear development has made a progress, or transportational capability has been elevated. That's the reality around Japan, and I think general public know that. Therefore, Europe, Middle East, Asia all linked. I say that because of the situations around Japan. And in national security issues and the Middle East affairs need to be communicated for general public. In a context of the dependence of 80% of oil, that's something we need to know head on. Peace and stability of the region is necessary to be beneficiary in Japan. And for that, what kind of the role that we are playing? Not just beneficiary of interests, we shouldn't be a pure beneficiary. And I don't intend to talk about the shouldering military perspective, but the peace and stability of the Middle East, because of that, we are able to be a beneficiary. Plus, we are enjoying 80% of oil, depending in that region. And what kind of the efforts have been made to the peace and stability? And that there are a number of the companies who are owning nuclear capability, and how much sense of crisis we have for that potential eventuality. And that's the kind of the messages we would like to come across for general public so that they understand.
ます。
Now, 中国ニュースペーパー中川さん。中国ニュースペーパー中川 about the transformation of politics, the donation from the corporate sector. At the end of March, there should have been conclusion at the different parties. However, there was no conclusion given in this third session. What kind of contents do you think will be needed for the conclusion? And then, so there is no realization of the transformation for politicians whose votes were invalidated, and how are you going to discuss this? And so discussion itself, just like a consultation before, are you going to leave it to the external parties or experts, and what is the current perception about this? In the last session, in this current session, we had a very serious and sincere discussions and about the corporate sector's donation to political parties. Disclosure rather than ban. So disclosure should happen so that the voters can exercise their own decisions. So that should be the situation that we should create. And we exercise our efforts, and in order to gain more understanding, so we'd like to work more. And about the political transformation, people shouldn't be worried about such issue being left behind. So our party will exercise our efforts. And then about the revenue return of the politicians whose seats have been invalidated, we already confirmed at the coalition government, and then also legislation relevant to that. In order to make a conclusion, we'd like to have a constructive discussion. And this is an ongoing discussion, however, how the diet should be and how politics should be. So whether or not politicians can really exercise our decisions, there has been such a discussion because we try to take it for our advantage. So such might be the people's perception that I have known for 40 years. So that members shouldn't serve their own interest. And with that in mind, regarding what you have said before, legislative branch responsibilities are there, and on a broad basis, we'd like to further exercise our efforts for more understanding with the people.
ます。
Let me take a final question. Nishiyama-san. Nishiyama from Nihonkai, thank you. In APA's election, in Tottori, Shimane, Tokushima, Kochi, those 4 prefectures will have a 4th election. The voting rate is significantly lower, and also valid voting rate is going up. And those are some of the comments that the experts have talked about. Now, you're from Tottori, and you have this 4th election. How do you put this? How do you correct this? What's your path forward? Tottori, Shimane, and Kochi, and the other prefecture of the thing, and we will correct that That's something we made a promise in election, and we are unable to realize that yet. That's solely to blame on us. I would like to extend deep apologies for this. In this election, we are going to have a combined electoral district. How many voters are able to actually understand what the candidates are saying? And I already made an effort, but this time we are going to do that again. And this month, each party and each group have formed a House reform group, and they formulated a report. And if you read it, the current barriers of the combined electoral district, and that's a shared concerns among the parties concerned, and we should correct that. That's the part of the consensus we are seeing here in the discussion. In each party, each group think that this combined district court election district is invalid. They think that with the legislative measures, can we correct it? Without increasing the burden of general public, how much we are ensuring the equity of the vote. That's in a function of the rights of the voters. From that perspective, we continue to strive forward. Tottori, Shimane, Tokushima, Kochi, the same goes for that. I mean, those are the prefectures that see declining population, that they're hollowed areas. I mean, it's not just for the four prefectures. I mean, the voices of these prefectures need to be heard. Is it really okay not to be able to hear those? It's not really about city or countryside. But for the country, what does the combined electoral district mean? The voice of these hollowed area, declining population area, need to be heard. That's the kind of country we should create. We need to resolve these issues as soon as possible, and for that, we are going to make an effort. Thank you very much. We would like to conclude the press conference by the Prime Minister. Now, for those of you who are raising hand, we would like to follow up, and I'll appreciate it if you submit the document of the questions. I'll appreciate it if you send one question to us, and we would like to return by paper. Thank you so much. Thank you.